Should the PCs be able to buy magic items? Should your fantasy cities have magic item markets? If you get the answer wrong, it will destroy your campaign! No, not really. But it will have a pretty big impact on the tone. A world where even the smallest magical trinket, prized from the ruins of the Eld Kingdoms of the East, is unspeakably rare and will draw the wondering gaze of everyone back in town, is going to feel very different from one where every noble is bedecked in wondrous garments and likely wears a magic ring or two on their fingers. And both might feel different from one where all but the poorest serfs can afford a suit of self-mending and self-cleaning clothes. Because it's not just how common magic is, it's how common different types of magic are. Middle-earth is a good example here. There are these rare and special magic items that can only be found on adventures. Mithril shirts crafted with forgotten dwarven arts, and magic swords of Gondolin. But there's also elven cloaks and magic ropes and lembas bread, all of which are common craft items for the elves, even if they're strange and fey to the player characters. The common argument against allowing PCs to buy magic items, of course, is that it makes magical items feel less magical. Although maybe the better way to put it would be less arcane, less mysterious, less special. And of course, that's true. But that can also be okay. As the elves of Middle-earth suggest, something can still be fantastical and wondrous to the players or the audience, even if it's less so to the characters. In some cases, it may be even more wondrous. Spaceships are pretty commonplace in Star Wars, but that's part of what makes the Star Wars universe so cool. Now, there are some practicalities to consider. If the PCs can loot magic items on their adventures, then there will almost certainly come a point where they end up with an item that they can't use or don't want. If those PCs live in a world where magic items are so staggeringly rare that it's virtually impossible to buy them, then it follows that when they go to sell that special magic item, they should be able to find someone willing to pay a small fortune for it. I mean, think about it. If somebody came up to you and said, "Hey, I have these magical boots that let you fly," how much would you pay for that? How much would Jeff Bezos or Richard Branson or David Beckham pay for that? On the other hand, buying magic items will also have an effect on game balance. Anything that's commonly and reliably available to the PCs will become kit. No different than 10-foot poles, 50 feet of rope, or a suit of plate armor. In D&D, you have to be particularly aware that anything that's very expensive but ultimately attainable for a Tier 1 character can very easily become a near-infinite supply of cheap trinkets for Tier 3 characters. For example, having easy access to affordable healing items can dramatically shift the pace of play, the frequency of short and long rests, and the spellcasting power of characters who might otherwise be burning slots for healing spells. That's not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, I generally prefer it when the PCs can, if the need arises, extend their adventuring day by investing resources in consumable healing items. But it's something you want to think about. So, ultimately, the question for me isn't, should the PCs be able to buy and sell magic items? The far more interesting questions are which items, and where, and how. If we assume that magic items are available for sale in your campaign, then there are two questions that the players will ask that you will need to have answers for. Can I find the specific item that I want? And what items are available for sale? Now, in order to answer these questions, you're going to want three things. First, a list of common magic items. This is the stuff that's basically standard equipment. It may be expensive or only available in special markets, but if someone can afford it, then they'll almost certainly be able to purchase it. There's still quite a bit of potential range here. I mean, is it as common as a torch, a suit of chain armor, a boat? Now, if you want to add a little more texture to this, you can create thresholds on this list for communities of different sizes. Some items can be found in any village, while for others you'll need to travel to a nearby town, and some stuff might only be available in the largest cities. I found a useful mental model for this is the spice trade in the Middle Ages. You can probably get a hold of salt almost anywhere, but something like cinnamon is going to be rare anywhere outside the large cities, and you'll have to pay a pretty penny for it regardless. Now, to model that rarity, you could also assign a percentage value to each item. There might be a 90% chance that you can find a potion of healing in a big city, but only a 20% chance that there'll be one for sale in a small village. Now similarly, I'll often set the rarity of scrolls to 80% minus 5% per level of the spell. The second thing you'll want to prep is the local magic market. In its most basic form, this boils down to a list of magic items that are available in a particular community. You can build this list by hand, but it can also be fun to randomly roll it up and see what happens. There are a lot of different ways you can do this, depending on the tools you have. If you have the D&D 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide, for example, you can use the treasure hoard tables. For every 1,000 people in a community, roll 1d20 to determine a challenge rating. Then roll on the matching hoard table, ignoring any items that already appear on your list of common magic items. I did a simulated example of this using the city of Dwerdel. It has a population of 40,000, so I made a total of 40 checks, which took me about 10 minutes. For the first check, I rolled a 15, so I rolled on the challenge 11 to 16 table. The result there told me to roll on the magic item table E, and that roll was a 69. Nice. Which is a potion of supreme healing. I've decided that healing potions, even potions of supreme healing, are common magic items, so I ignored this result. For the second check, I rolled a 6. So then I rolled on the challenge 5 to 10 table, which told me to roll 1d4 times on the magic item table B. The d4 roll was a 3, and so I ended up rolling a potion of resistance, a potion of greater healing, and a bag of holding. I discarded the potion of greater healing, and I wrote down the other 2. As I continued making these checks, I also started jotting down ideas sparked by the random items. For example, I actually rolled up several more bags of holding, but also a bag of devouring. What if there was a murderous merchant who demonstrates a bag of holding to would-be customers, but then swaps in a bag of devouring? I also rolled up a bunch of potions of giant strength. Could a different adventuring party have found the ruins of a dwarven alchemy lab in the mountains of the east, and then looted these potions from there? Could be. And now I've got an idea for a whole new adventure. There's quite a bit of other fun stuff you can do with your market list, particularly if your campaign is based in a single city and the PCs will be spending all or much of their time there. I'm going to link to an article in the Font of All Knowledge down below that will get into the nitty-gritty detail on that kind of stuff. But in any case, you've got your local magic market list. These are all the items available for sale in the city. What exactly that means will depend on the city. The local Wizards Guild might have a tight monopoly on sales, or there could be a few different specialty shops and the PCs can check the inventory at each. Maybe some of these items are being offered by an impoverished noble family, or they're a cache left behind with a local innkeeper when an adventurer couldn't pay their bill. Okay, so now let's go back to the questions your players were asking. These platinum pieces are burning a hole in my pockets. What can I buy in Dwerdel? With what we've prepped, this is now an easy question to answer. You've got your list of common items, and you've got a list of all the items currently available for sale here in Dwerdel. How you want to frame this is up to you. You might just give the player a list of items. Alternatively, they might need to ask around to find out about the items left in hock with the innkeeper, or to set up a meeting with the impoverished nobles. If they go to one of the 4 local merchants who deal with magic items, on the other hand, you might randomly roll on your local magic market table to figure out which items are specifically being sold by that merchant. Okay, I want to buy all the healing potions. If the PCs want multiple items on the common magic items list, I'll keep rolling the item's rarity until I get a null result to see how many are available. Although that might mean, of course, that there's none available here in town. On the other hand, if the item is so common that I didn't give it a rarity rating, then we can usually assume it's ubiquitous enough that the PCs can buy as many as they can afford. I want a decanter of endless water. Can I find one for sale? If the PCs want a specific item, I check the local magic market. If it's there, then they can easily track it down. If it isn't, then they might still be able to track it down, possibly with a charisma investigation check or some other appropriate skill check with the DC set by the rarity of the item, but it's not available for sale. What that means exactly will usually depend on the item, the PC's current circumstances, and my creative whim. For example, in my campaign run in Monty Cook's Tollus, the PCs wanted an anti-undead item, so I decided that the Knights of the Pale, an order of knights dedicated to guarding the necropolis, had 2 of them. They'd be willing to part with one of them if the PCs would do them a big favor. When they wanted a magical banner, on the other hand, it turned out to be part of the supplies maintained by the Commissar's army. Fortunately, the PCs were already working with the Commissar, so they just had to requisition it, but then they were responsible for its safe return, of course. Now, in another case, the crime family that the PCs had tangled with a few times and had managed to reach a tentative detente with were known to have the items that the PCs were looking for. Now, did the PCs want to give up on it? Steal it? Try to cut a deal with the criminals? It's up to them. Now, you could also have an item available at a private auction. How can the PCs wrangle an invitation? And I wonder who else will be bidding, right? The possibilities, as you can see, are endless, and you can use them to set up all kinds of dilemmas and hook any number of interesting adventures. If you can't think of any interesting options for the item where the PCs currently are, or if it just wouldn't make sense for it to exist there, then you can always default to telling the PCs that the item can be found somewhere else. The big city, the castle of ultimate evil, Tiamat's hoard, whatever works. And ideally, somewhere awesome for them to go. Of course, now that the PCs have found the item they want, there's still the question of how much they're going to need to pay for it. In most editions of D&D, you can just look the item up and it will have a price listed. But not in D&D 5th edition. If you're running 5th edition, though, you do have a few options. First, there are some very broad guidelines for pricing in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. You'll still end up doing a lot of the heavy lifting yourself, but it's not a bad place to start. If you've discovered that you've made something too cheap or too expensive, don't hesitate to change it. Prices in the real world change all the time. Now second, a lot of the magic items in 5th edition came from previous editions, so you can often just grab the prices from the AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide or D&D 3rd edition, or at least use those lists, which can often be found online too, as guidance for setting your own prices. A third option exists because a fan on the Giant in the Playground forums named Seidoro developed a list of sane magical prices for 5th edition, which were then compiled into a handy PDF by Sam and Squire. This is a great free resource, and I'm going to include a link to it in the font of all knowledge, so that you can grab your own copy. Now, throughout this entire video, we've talked about how there are practical reasons for having a local magic market, and how there are simulationist reasons for having the local magic market. But all of this is also an opportunity for world building and adventure creation. Now, obviously, being able to sell your loot provides motivation for going on adventures. But seeing the big price tag on the thing you want more than anything else in the world, and saving your gold pieces and counting your copper pieces until you can afford it, is also a great motivator. Even more than that, when you tell the PCs that the Lance of Lightning is in Tiamat's hoard, that's the hook for an epic planar adventure. And when you tell them that the only known shield of the Watcher is the one held in the Holy Museum of Galliel the All-Mother, well, that's both the hook for an amazing heist, and also an incredible ethical dilemma. You also don't have to wait for the players to ask about a specific item to do this. You can use your local magic market as a source for stocking and restocking your rumor tables. Now, if you're not familiar with how to use rumor tables, check out my book, So You Want to Be a Game Master, or hit the subscribe button. We'll have a video about them soon. But in addition to hooking individual items, your magic markets are also an opportunity in themselves. Even their most basic implementation will create a tangible difference between podunk villages and big city metropolises. It's a subtle thing, but it will make your world feel more like a real place. But there's even more that you can do. For example, you can theme your magic markets. Remember how the elves of Lothlorien treat elven cloaks and lembas bread as common magic items? You can do the same thing, making big, bold statements about regions, cultures, religions, and history, while creating a real, we're not in Kansas anymore kind of feeling when the PCs arrive somewhere where the things they think fantastical are commonplace, and vice versa. This can also create fascinating shifts in gameplay. If I tell you that Dust of Disappearance and Potions of Mind Reading are super common here, but nobody knows how to brew a potion of healing, you're going to end up with very different adventures than the ones you might be used to. Now, in addition to varying selection, you can also change the community threshold and the percentage chances for finding each common item. And with a little extra effort, you can do the same thing by theming your entire local magic market. Thora on the coast is home to Wavemancers and filled with sea and water-themed items, but if you want magic weapons, then you need to journey to the dwarven forges of the Underking. And if you want to add little extra magic while sailing to Ithar, make sure to check out Songs of the Spellbound Sea from So Many Robots, the sponsor for today's video. Songs of the Spellbound Sea is a 200-plus page book containing everything you need for thrilling adventures at sea, including hundreds of spells, new species, new monsters, 3 new classes, the Troubadour, the Swashbuckler, and the Blood Rager, plus enchanting island mini-settings you can drop into your campaign for instant adventure. Maybe your players will find some of the magic items they're looking for there, too. Songs of the Spellbound Sea is on Kickstarter right now, and you can find an affiliate link to the campaign in the font of all knowledge down below. While you're down there, make sure to hit the subscribe button. It may not be available for sale wherever you're going next. Good gaming. This is Justin Alexander, and I'll see you at the table. Should the PCs be able to buy magic items?
Yes!
Should your...